Welcome back to the Midnight Tapes. Get comfortable. Turn the lights down low, pull the blanket up, and let the rain settle in around you. Tonight, all 8 stories come from the open sea. From the long night watches on lonely ships, the isolated lighthouses standing against the dark, the fishing boats far from any shore. The sea is the oldest and deepest of the wild places, and the least known. We have mapped the land, lit our cities, tamed the forests, but the ocean remains vast and dark and unknowable, going down for miles beneath the thin hull that carries us across its surface. Every sailor knows the feeling of being out on the deep water at night. A small lit thing floating on an unimaginable depth of cold black sea, with no land for hundreds of miles, and the whole weight of the ocean below, full of things we will never see, looking up at the little light moving across the surface above them. These came from sailors and lighthouse keepers and fishermen who spent their nights on the dark water and lived to come ashore. You don't have to stay awake for all of them. Let your eyes close whenever they want to. You're not at sea tonight. You're home, on solid ground. The only water near you, the soft rain on the roof. You're safe here, the door is locked. The dark is just the dark. Just don't look too long over the side at the deep black water. Let's begin. Before the first tape begins, let the sound of the rain become the sea for a moment, but only gently. Not the sea itself, not the deep black water, not the endless field of moving dark beyond a ship's rail. Just the suggestion of it, softened by distance, made safe by the roof above you. That is the kindness of a story like this. It lets us stand near the edge without stepping over. It lets us look toward the water from a warm room, feel the size of it, and then remember that we are not on a deck tonight, not in a tower on a rock, not alone with a radio whispering Mayday into static. The sea has always frightened people because it does not need to hate us to take us. A mountain may be climbed, a forest may be crossed, a desert may be measured in miles and waterskins, but the ocean remains a depth first and a surface only by accident. We travel on the skin of it and call that mastery. Below that thin skin, the world continues downward in cold layers, in pressure and darkness, in lives that do not know our names until we make enough noise above them. Sailors know this in their bodies. They may laugh in port, curse the weather, complain about wages, but at night, alone with the rail and the black water, they know exactly how small a ship is. So let these stories move slowly, like a vessel crossing in darkness. Let them arrive one light at a time. A voice near the hull, a wet step on lighthouse stairs, a black calm that lifts, an old ship passing without a radar return. None of them need to hurry. The sea never hurries. It has all night, and then another night, and then every night after that. You can rest while they pass. You are on land. You are breathing easily. The rain outside is only rain, and the deepest water is far away. The night watch. I crewed on cargo ships for years, long ocean crossings, and the part of the job that stays with me is the night watch. Out in the middle of the ocean on the night watch, alone on deck while the rest of the crew sleeps below, you understand the sea in a way you never do in daylight. The vastness of it, the darkness, the depth beneath you, miles of cold black water, and your ship a tiny lit speck crawling across the top of it. Most night watches are just long and lonely and cold, but some of them are something else. And the one I'll tell you about is the reason I left the sea. It was a calm night, deep in a long crossing hundreds of miles from any land. I was on the night watch, alone on deck, the ship quiet, the sea flat and black and endless. And in the stillness, I heard something in the water. Off the side of the ship, down at the waterline, a sound. Swimming. The soft, rhythmic sound of something swimming alongside the ship, keeping pace, in the middle of the ocean where nothing should have been. I went to the rail and looked down at the black water, and I could see nothing, just the dark sea sliding past the hull. But the sound was there, something swimming alongside, in the deep ocean, keeping pace with the ship. And then it spoke. From the water, down at the waterline, a voice, soft and wet and close, called up to me. It called me by a name. Not my name, but a name, a sailor's name, called up softly from the black water as the thing swam alongside the ship in the dark. "Come down," it said, soft and coaxing. "Come down to the water. So nice down here. Come and see. Come down." A voice from the deep ocean, swimming alongside the hull, calling me down into the black water, into the miles of cold dark depth, with a patience and a sweetness that pulled at something in me, some deep dangerous urge to climb the rail and answer it. I did not go down. I gripped the rail until my knuckles were white, and I did not climb over, and I did not answer, and I made myself walk away from the rail, back to the center of the deck, away from the voice in the water. And it called to me all night, the thing swimming alongside the ship, soft and coaxing, naming names, asking me to come down to the water, growing more insistent as the night wore on and I did not answer. Stopped at dawn. With the first light, the swimming sound faded, the voice went silent, and whatever had paced the ship through the night sank back into the deep. I asked the old hands about it the next day carefully. They didn't laugh. One of them just nodded and said, "The night watch.
Yeah.
Something swims alongside, out in the deep, and it calls you down to the water. It knows sailors' names, all the old ones, all the drowned ones. Don't ever answer. Don't ever go to the rail. And whatever you do, don't ever climb over to see what's calling you." I finished that crossing and I never sailed again. The deep ocean wanted me to come down to the water, and I have spent my life grateful that I held the rail and didn't answer and made it to dawn. The rain's still falling. Stay with me. Here's the next one. The part one have never been able to explain properly is the way the voice seemed to know the rhythm of the ship. It did not call randomly. It waited for the engine to settle into its long, low throb, waited for the bow to rise and fall, waited for the metal under my boots to hum in that lonely way a ship hums when everyone but the watch is asleep. Then it would place its words in the gaps. Not loud enough to be mistaken for a shout, not faint enough to be dismissed as wind. It understood the night watch. It understood that one lonely man, standing between the sleeping crew and the bottomless water, has too much room in his mind for a voice. Before that crossing, I had always thought the old sailors were exaggerating when they spoke of the sea as if it had moods and intentions. The sea was weather, current, pressure, tide. It was water and wind and charts. But out there, in the dark, with the rail cold under my hands and the sound of something swimming easily beside a vessel that should have been moving too fast for anything living to match, I understood why sailors gave the ocean a mind. Felt watched from below. Felt known. It felt as if the whole black mass under the hull had been aware of our little ship long before any of us noticed it in return. I checked the deck twice that night, not because I expected to find anyone, but because a rational man needs rituals when the irrational is speaking to him from the water. I walked past the secured cargo, past the vents breathing warmth from below, past the stacked equipment and the orange rings and the lifeboats hanging motionless in their cradles. Everything was as it should have been. Every bolt, chain, and hatch belonged to the world of men. But every time I came near the rail, the other world rose back into hearing. The wet breathing, the soft cutting of water, the patient voice asking someone by a dead man's name to come down and be welcomed. It did not only use one name. That was another detail I left out when I first told people the story, because it sounded too theatrical, too impossible, and I feared they would stop listening. The first name was not mine, but later it tried others. Old-fashioned names, sailors' names, a Tomas, a Henry, a Leclerc, an Abel, a Jonah. Names from ships I had never served on, from nations and years I did not know, spoken with the same damp tenderness, as though it were reading from a list kept somewhere under the sea. Each name was followed by the same invitation. Come down to the water. It is time. We have been waiting. At one point I thought I heard my own name hidden beneath the others. Not spoken plainly, not yet, more like a shape forming under the surface of the sound, the way a dark body forms under water before it breaks the skin. I stepped back then, truly stepped back, because I understood that answering was not the only danger. Listening too closely was a kind of answer. Giving it the attention it wanted, letting it search through the names until it found the one that belonged to me might have been enough. So I moved to the center of the deck and kept my eyes on the mast lights and recited engine temperatures to myself like a prayer. There were practical things I should have done. I should have called the officer on duty. I should have woken the captain. I should have reported a possible hazard alongside the hull. But some fears make you quiet. Some events arrive already wrapped in the knowledge that official language will not survive them. What would I have said into the intercom? That a voice in the ocean was asking me to climb over? That something was swimming with us hundreds of miles from land and knew the names of drowned men? It would have sounded like exhaustion. So I stood alone with it, because loneliness was the shape the night had chosen for me. The longer it called, the more beautiful the water seemed. That is the shameful part. The voice was not monstrous. It was not snarling or cruel. It was almost loving. Promised coolness, rest, weightlessness. It told me the sea would hold me better than any bunk, that there was no more work down there, no watches, no cold deck, no long crossings, no ports to miss and no homes to fail to return to. It made drowning sound like sleep. It made the black water below the rail seem not like death, but like a bed that had been made for sailors since the first man pushed a boat from shore. I think that is how it takes them. Not with violence, not most of the time. It does not need to. A man alone on watch is tired. Every sailor is tired somewhere deep in the bones. The sea knows that. It waits until the tiredness becomes larger than fear, until the rail seems low, until the splash below seems soft, until the idea of sinking no longer feels like panic but like surrender. It calls with drowned names because it wants to convince you that the ones who went before are not gone but waiting, companionable and patient, just below the dark skin of the water. Near dawn, when the eastern edge of the sky began to loosen, the voice changed. It was subtle, but I heard it. The sweetness thinned. The patience cooled. It had failed with me, and whatever tenderness it had been wearing fell away for a moment. The swimming sound came closer to the hull. Something brushed the metal below the rail with a long, slow scrape. Not hard enough to damage, but hard enough to let me know it was there, hard enough to make the ship shiver under my feet. Then it whispered one last name, very low, a name I did not recognize but somehow mourned hearing, and the water went quiet. In the mess the next morning, nobody asked why I looked the way I did. That is another thing about ships. Men who work the sea know when not to ask. One older deckhand poured coffee into my mug until it overflowed into the saucer, then put a hand on my shoulder and said, without looking at me, that the sea is full of invitations. Some are storms, some are money, some are women in ports you should not enter, and some come from below the rail in the voice of someone who sounds kind. A sailor survives by knowing which invitations are meant to bring him home and which are meant to make him part of the water. I tried for a while after that to laugh about it. I told myself I had been sleep deprived, that sound carries strangely over water, that some animal must have surfaced beside the hull. But no animal speaks names. No current asks you to come down. And no hallucination leaves saltwater handprints on the outside of the rail where I had stood, visible in the first morning light, high enough that nothing ordinary swimming beside the ship should have been able to reach. I wiped them away before anyone else saw them. I do not know why. Perhaps I was afraid that if the others saw proof, the thing would feel acknowledged. When I signed off at the next port, the captain only nodded. He had seen men leave the sea for less. He asked no questions, and I gave no explanation. My sea bag felt heavier than it ever had, as if it carried not clothes and papers, but the weight of all that black water I had not entered. On the dock, I looked back at the ship and felt the strangest grief. I had loved the sea. I still did. But love is not the same as trust. The ocean had spoken to me softly, and I had learned that it wanted something from me that I was not willing to give. I live inland now, far inland. People find that funny, given my old life. They tell me I must miss the smell of salt, the gulls, the long horizon. I do. Of course I do. But sometimes, when rainwater runs in the gutter outside my window at night, I hear a thin, wet sound beneath it, and for one impossible second I am back on deck, alone, gripping the rail, listening to the patient invitation rising from the black. That is enough sea for me now. A sound in the rain, a memory, a refusal that still has to be made, some nights, even on dry land. The rain is still falling. Stay with me. Here is the next one. The lighthouse keeper's log. I took a posting as a lighthouse keeper on a remote rock far out from the mainland, one of those old isolated lights, automated now in most ways, but still requiring a human keeper to live there, to maintain things, to make sure the light never failed. It was the solitude I wanted, and the solitude I got. Just me and the tower and the endless sea, weeks at a stretch with no other soul. On my first night, settling in, I found the keeper's log, the running record kept by every keeper of that light, going back decades, each one adding their entries. And I read back through the final entries of the keeper before me. I wish I hadn't. The early entries were ordinary, weather, sea state, maintenance, the mundane record of a lighthouse keeper's days. But the keeper's final weeks grew strange. He wrote about the light, about how, on certain nights, the beam seemed to attract things. Not ships, but things out in the dark water, drawn to the light, gathering around the base of the tower in the sea. He wrote about sounds from below, from the rocks at the foot of the lighthouse at night, about something climbing, about finding the lower door, which he kept locked, open in the mornings. His handwriting grew worse, more frightened, as the entries went on. And his final entry, the last thing he ever wrote in that log, read simply, "It's in the tower now, comes up the stairs at night. I've stopped locking the door. There's no point. It just wants to keep the light too. Maybe it always did. Maybe the light was never ours. I should have left then. I didn't. Pride, stubbornness, the contract, the long boat ride back. So I stayed and I kept the light, and for a few nights all was well. And then I began to understand the previous keeper's entries. Because on certain nights, the beam did draw things. I'd see them, faintly, in the sweep of the light, shapes in the water gathering around the base of the tower. And I heard the sounds from below, from the rocks at night. And one morning, I found the lower door open, the door I kept locked. And I heard, on the worst nights, something on the stairs, something climbing the spiral stairs of the lighthouse in the dark, slow and wet and patient, coming up toward the light. I did what the previous keeper did in the end. I stopped locking the door, because he was right, there was no point. Whatever climbed the tower at night could not be kept out by a lock. And I came to understand what it wanted, the same thing the previous keeper had understood in his final entry. It wanted to keep the light. It came up the stairs at night not to harm me, but to tend the light alongside me, to keep the beam burning, to do the keeper's work. Because it had been keeping that light, I slowly realized, for longer than any human keeper, since before the lighthouse was even built, when the rock itself was the only warning to ships. The light was never ours. We were just the latest keepers, the human keepers, sharing the work with the thing that had kept that rock and its warning since the beginning. I finished my posting. I kept the light, with my unseen fellow keeper climbing the stairs each night to keep it too. And when I left, I added my own final entry to the log. For the next keeper, the way the keeper before me had. It keeps the light with you. Don't fight it. Don't lock the door. It only wants what you want, to keep the light burning and the ship safe through the dark. You're not alone up here. You never were. You're doing fine. Let your eyes rest. The next tape is already playing. A lighthouse keeper learns to respect repetition. The work is made of small, faithful acts, each one unremarkable, each one necessary. Polish the glass. Check the mechanism. Inspect the lamp. Record the weather. Listen to the sea. Sleep when you can. Wake when you must. The tower becomes a clock, and your body becomes one of its gears. That is why the log mattered so much to me. It was not just a record. It was proof that other men had lived by the same rhythm in the same narrow rooms, that solitude had not invented itself for me alone. The handwriting in the older pages had personalities. Some keepers wrote neat official entries, nothing more than wind direction, visibility, and maintenance notes. Others grew conversational, confessing boredom, irritation, small triumphs over repairs, admiration for a sunrise, hatred for a winter storm. Reading them in the dim keeper's room, I felt surrounded by a quiet fraternity of lonely men. Then I reached the final entries of my predecessor, and the companionship curdled. His words had the look of someone trying to remain official while terror climbed the stairs below him. At first he had called the shapes in the water seals, then rocks, then floating weed. The entries showed the progression of a mind trying to preserve normal explanations as each one failed. On a fog night he wrote possible seals at base of rock. 2 nights later, unusual congregation of marine life around tower. A week after that, figures in water remained stationary during tide change. Watching beam. By the time he wrote the word watching, he had pressed the pen so hard through the page that the next sheet bore the bruise of the letters. I found myself doing what he had done. I stood in the lantern room and watched the sweep of light move over the sea, and I searched for ordinary explanations. The shapes below were kelp until they were not. They were seals until they held too still. They were rocks until the tide moved around them, and they remained gathered in a circle at the base of the tower, all turned toward the light. The beam passed over them again and again, briefly revealing slick dark backs, pale upturned faces, hands perhaps, or fins perhaps, or neither, all lifted toward the revolving lamp as if toward a fire in winter. The lower door was the worst part because a door is such a human object. Locks and hinges belong to us. A door separates the inside from the outside, safety from weather, man from sea. The morning I found it open, dripping seawater across the threshold, I felt not only fear but offense, as if the tower's own promise had been violated. I locked it again. I checked the bolt. I tied it with rope. The next morning it was open, the rope neatly undone and coiled on the floor, like a courtesy. That courtesy frightened me more than force would have. The stairs taught me patience. At night, when the sounds began below, I learned how slow a thing can climb. One wet placement, a pause, another, a soft drag on iron, a faint tap against the central column. It never hurried. It had all the time in the world. The tower's spiral stair carried each sound upward with cruel clarity, turning distance into suspense, making every level seem like a question. Is it at the storeroom now? Is it at the kitchen? Is it outside the sleeping quarters? Has it reached the lantern room? And always, somewhere above those questions, the light revolved, steady and indifferent. When I stopped locking the lower door, it was not surrender exactly. It was recognition. The lighthouse was built on a rock that had known the sea long before men poured stone and iron into its shape. We had arrived with lenses and mechanisms and a name on the chart, and we had declared ourselves keepers. But the rock had already had a keeper. The sea had already marked it. Whatever climbed at night was not invading the tower. It was returning to work it considered older than our employment, older than our wages, older than the brass plate on the wall that listed human authorities. Once, during a storm, the lamp faltered. A belt slipped in the mechanism, nothing catastrophic, but enough that the beam stuttered. I was exhausted, soaked from a repair below, and for a terrible minute I could not get the rhythm right. Then a hand appeared beside mine on the brass. I saw only the hand, wet and gray and long-fingered, closing over the housing with surprising delicacy. It held the part steady while I fixed the belt. It did not grab me. It did not pull. It helped. When the beam resumed its steady sweep, the hand withdrew into the stairwell, leaving a smear of seawater that smelled not rotten, but old, like stones uncovered at low tide. After that, my fear changed shape. It did not vanish, but it became something like respect. We worked in shifts, the unseen keeper and I. By day, I tended the human portions of the light, the oil, the glass, the generator, the log. By night, it came up from the sea and made its own inspection. Sometimes I would wake to the sound of the lantern room door opening above me, to a slow, wet movement circling the lamp. In the morning, the glass would be perfectly clean on the outside, cleaner than I could have managed in the salt wind, every pane clear for the ships. I began writing differently in the log, not openly. A log may be read by inspectors, and inspectors do not care for mysteries that drip on the stairs. But I left small notes for whoever would understand them. Lower door left unsecured by choice. Night inspection completed. Second keeper present during storm. Beam maintained. In ordinary ink, the entries looked like maintenance remarks. To the next keeper, if they ever felt wet footsteps below, they would mean something else. They would mean, do not panic. The work is shared. The tower is older than your fear. The loneliness of that posting never returned in quite the same way. A lighthouse is lonely when you believe you are the only living thing on the rock. It becomes stranger but less lonely when you know the sea itself sends someone up the stairs to keep watch with you. I began setting 2 cups on the table during storms, though only one was ever used. I spoke aloud sometimes, not expecting an answer, and never receiving one in words. Yet the tower felt listened to, and the lamp burned clean, and the ships passed safely beyond the rocks. When the relief boat came at the end of my posting, I almost hated to leave. That surprised me. I had counted the days for weeks, then found myself lingering in the lantern room, hand on the rail, watching the beam sweep the gray morning sea. Below, around the base of the rock, the dark shapes gathered in the water. Not many, just enough. I felt they knew I was going. I felt absurdly that I owed them thanks. So I descended the stairs slowly, leaving the lower door unlocked behind me, the way a man leaves a key under the mat for a trusted colleague. My final entry was longer than the regulations allowed. I wrote it for the next keeper, and for the one after, and for anyone who reads old logs by lamplight and feels the page grow cold under their hands. Keep the light. Respect the stairs. Do not mistake company for threat simply because it comes from the sea. If the door is open in the morning, close it if you like, but do not imagine the lock matters. If the lamp falters and a wet hand helps you, accept the help. The ships are the point. The beam is the promise. And on that rock, at least, the promise is kept by more than one kind of keeper. You are doing fine. Let your eyes rest. The next tape is already playing. The calm. I sailed on a small vessel, a crew of a handful on long ocean passages. And every experienced sailor will tell you that the storms aren't the worst of it. The worst is the calm. The dead calm, far from shore, when the wind dies completely and the sea goes flat and glassy and still, and the boat sits motionless on a mirror of black water under a vast silent sky, and there is nothing, for hundreds of miles in any direction. The calm is when the sea feels most like what it is, a vast, deep, watchful thing. And it was in a dead calm, one night, far from any land, that the thing happened that none of us ever spoke of again. The calm had settled at dusk, the wind gone, the sails slack, the sea flattening to glass. We sat becalmed under the stars, the water perfectly still, the silence total. And in that perfect stillness, deep in the night, the sea began to change. The water around the boat, glassy and black, began to move. Not waves, not wind, a swelling, a rising, as though something vast beneath the surface were lifting the whole sea. The water bulging upward, slowly, all around the becalmed boat. The flat black mirror doming up as something enormous rose beneath it from the deep. We stood at the rails, the whole crew silent, watching the sea itself lift around us, feeling the boat rise on the swelling water, understanding that something below us, something the size of which we could not comprehend, was rising up from the miles of dark ocean toward the surface, toward our tiny boat sitting helpless and becalmed on the glassy sea. It rose until we could feel it beneath us. The boat lifted high on the doming water, the sea swollen all around into a vast smooth hill of black water with our boat at its peak, and below us, just below the surface now, something so large that it was the swelling, something that filled the sea beneath us from horizon to horizon, risen up from the deep to just beneath the boat. And it held there, the whole crew frozen, not breathing, the boat balanced on the back of something vast just below the surface, in the dead calm, in the dark. And we waited to die, to be capsized, to be taken down into the deep when it finally breached. It did not breach. It held us up on the swelling water for a long, long moment that I have never stopped reliving. And then slowly it sank back down. The water lowered. The swelling subsided. The sea flattened back to glass, and the boat settled, and whatever vast thing had risen beneath us from the deep sank back down into the miles of dark water, and was gone. We did not speak of it. Not that night, not ever. Not among ourselves, and not to anyone ashore. What was there to say? We had felt the sea lift beneath us, felt something the size of the ocean floor rise up to look at our tiny boat, felt it hold us on its back in the dead calm and then let us go. The wind returned at dawn, and we sailed on, and we made port, and we went our separate ways, and we never spoke of the calm. But I left the sea after that passage, because I had learned the thing that the calm teaches, the thing every sailor secretly fears, that the ocean is not empty, and it is not shallow, and the things that live in its deepest deep are larger than we can imagine, and patient, and on the still nights, in the dead calm, far from shore, they sometimes rise. Just to look, just to lift your little boat on their vast backs and feel the weight of you, and then to sink back down into the dark, leaving you becalmed on the glassy sea, alive, and changed and silent forever. If your eyes are closed now, let them stay closed. You don't need to see for this one. There is a noise to ordinary sailing that you do not realize is noise until it is gone. Rope clicks against mast. Canvas mutters. Water works along the hull. Wood or metal complains softly depending on the boat. Even when the wind is gentle, the vessel is speaking, and the sea is answering. In the calm that night, all of that stopped. The absence of sound was so complete that it felt artificial, as though someone had cupped the whole ocean in a hand and hushed it. We lowered our voices without discussing it. Even the most talkative among us spoke like a man in church. The stars were unbearable. People who have not been far offshore in a dead calm imagine stars as comforting, but that night they felt like witnesses. The sea became a black mirror and gave the sky back perfectly, until we seemed to float not on water but between two infinities, stars above and stars below, the boat pinned in the middle like an insect between panes of glass. No horizon held. No direction felt trustworthy. The compass gave headings, yes, but the body stopped believing in north and south when the entire world became reflection. We tried to work because work is how sailors resist dread. One man checked the rigging. Another cleaned a line already clean. The captain studied the barometer, though the needle had barely moved. I went below and returned with coffee no one drank. The dead calm turned every ordinary action into a performance meant to convince the sea we were not afraid. But fear had already entered us. It sat quietly in the cockpit, uninvited, making room for itself among the crew. The first sign was not movement, but depth. I remember looking over the side with a flashlight and realizing the beam did not enter the water the way it should have. It seemed to stop at the surface, then vanish, as though the water below had become not transparent but absolute. Earlier that day we had seen blue, green, silver, current, foam. At night the sea was black in a way that felt solid. It did not look deep. It looked closed. It looked like a door we were floating on. Then the door lifted. We felt the rise before we understood it. A subtle change in balance. The boat leaned without wind. A cup slid across the galley counter below and broke, the sound sharp and obscene in the silence. Someone swore. The captain ordered everyone to stay low, but no one obeyed, because no sailor can feel the ocean lifting beneath him and remain below decks. We gathered at the rails, each of us drawn to the dark water despite the terror of looking at it, and watched the surface curve upward in every direction. I have tried for years to compare that rising to something familiar. A whale surfacing under a dinghy, a swell from a distant storm, a submerged hill lifting from below. None of those are right. It was not a wave and not an animal in the way we understand animals. It was scale itself becoming visible. The sea rose because something within it rose, and the shape beneath us was too broad for an edge, too immense for a body. We were not above its back. We were above a thought it was having about the surface. No one prayed aloud. That still strikes me as strange. We were men and women of different beliefs, and fear often makes people reach for the language they were given as children. But that night no one dared speak to anything beyond us, because beyond us was exactly where the thing was. To pray felt like addressing the wrong listener. Instead we held rails, lines, each other's sleeves, and stared at the swelling black water that had lifted our boat into the center of a vast, smooth hill. The instruments failed in small ways. The depth sounder blinked nonsense. The GPS held, but its numbers seemed absurd. A little electronic confidence in a place where electronics had no authority. The radio filled with a low tone that was not static and not interference. A sound below hearing more than within it, felt in the jaw and chest. The captain switched it off. The tone remained in the hull. The boat itself had become a tuning fork held against something enormous. For one moment, when the swelling reached its height, the surface beside us changed. I saw it only for a second, and I wish I had not. A pale curve under the black. Not skin exactly, not shell, not anything I have a word for. A texture larger than language, sliding just beneath the water, close enough that the starlight touched it and vanished. It made the boat seem not small but meaningless. A fleck, a grain of dust, a temporary irritation resting on the skin of a sleeping world. Yet it did not destroy us. That fact has become more frightening with time, not less. A storm might spare you by chance. A wave might miss, but that thing held us deliberately. It knew we were there. I am as certain of that as I am of my own hands. It lifted us, balanced us, considered us, perhaps felt the shape of us the way a person feels a leaf on their palm, and then chose not to close the fingers. Mercy is comforting when it comes from something human. From something that large, mercy is only another name for power. When it began to sink, nobody cheered. We had been given back, but none of us mistook that for safety. The water lowered with dreadful smoothness, and our little boat settled without a splash, as if nothing had happened, as if the sea had not become a mountain beneath us. The calm returned exactly as before, flat, black, star-filled. That sameness was almost insulting. We wanted wreckage, waves, evidence. Instead, the ocean offered only its ordinary face, and expected us to continue existing on top of it as if we had not seen beneath the mask. At dawn, the first breath of wind touched the sails, and several crew members began to cry, quietly, without shame, not because the wind saved us, though it did, but because ordinary motion had returned. The boat leaned for the right reason. Lines tightened. Water whispered against the hull. The world resumed its contract. We ate in silence. No one wrote the event in the log. The official entry for that night recorded dead calm until dawn. Light wind from the east, all well. That was the greatest lie I ever saw written at sea. Years later, I met one of the crew in a port city by accident. We were both older, both living ashore by then, both pretending the meeting was a pleasant coincidence. Over drinks, he finally asked whether I still thought about the calm. I said yes. He said he did too. Every time he saw a perfectly still pond, every time bathwater settled flat in a tub, every time a glass of dark beer reflected a ceiling light too clearly. We laughed because there was nothing else to do. Then he said very softly that he sometimes wondered whether the thing had been sleeping and whether our boat had woken it just enough for it to turn over. I do not like that thought, but I have never found a better one. The ocean is filled with movements we do not see, with lives too deep for our nets and lights and instruments. Perhaps the calm is not emptiness. Perhaps it is the sea holding still so that something below may pass, or rise, or listen. That is why sailors fear it. Not because nothing is happening, but because something may be happening with such vast slowness that the only sign is the absence of everything else. The wind dies, the waves flatten, the stars stare, and beneath you, something that has never needed to hurry begins to come up. If your eyes are closed now, let them stay closed. You do not need to see for this one. The other ship, on a long ocean crossing, far from any shipping lane, far from any land, you do not expect to see another vessel. The sea is vast, and ships are few, and out in the empty stretches you can go for weeks without sighting another light on the horizon. So when, on the night watch, deep in an empty crossing, I saw the lights of another ship, I was surprised, and then as it drew nearer I was afraid, because there was something wrong with the other ship, and the wrongness grew clearer the closer it came. It was an old ship, old in a way that didn't match the modern sea. An old design, old lights, an old shape against the stars, the kind of vessel that hadn't sailed in 100 years. It approached slowly, silently, with no sound of engines, no radio contact, though I hailed it again and again. It simply drew nearer across the dark water, an old ship out of another century, lit dim and yellow, sailing an empty ocean where it had no business being. I woke the captain. He came up and he looked at the other ship through his glasses, and he went very quiet, and he ordered us to change course, to give it a wide berth, to stay well away from the other ship and not, under any circumstances, to approach it or answer it or acknowledge it. As the other ship passed at a distance, I could see its decks in the dim light, and there were figures on them, a crew, sailors on the decks of the old ship, going about the work of sailing, but moving wrong, slow, and faded and silent, the crew of a ship that should not exist, sailing an empty sea in the dark. They did not look at us. They went about their endless work, the drowned crew of a lost ship, sailing on across the ocean as they had for 100 years, on a voyage that had no destination and no end. And as the two ships passed in the night, I understood that I was looking at one of the sea's oldest legends made real. A ghost ship, a lost vessel, sailing on forever, its drowned crew working the decks through the centuries, appearing to the living ships that crossed its path in the empty stretches of the dark ocean. We gave it a wide berth, and it passed, and it sailed on into the dark and was gone. The captain never explained why he'd ordered us away from it so urgently, but an old sailor on the crew told me later quietly. The other ship, he said, was always looking for crew, the drowned sailors that worked its decks. They had once been living sailors from living ships that had approached the ghost ship or answered it or boarded it and had joined its endless crew and now sailed with it forever. It's short-handed, the old sailor said grimly. A ship that sailed 100 years loses crew, is always looking to replace them. Approach it, answer it, board it, and you join it. You sail with it forever. That's why the captain steered us clear. You never go near the other ship. You never answer it. You give it a wide berth, and you let it pass, and you pray it doesn't take an interest in your crew. I left the sea before long, and I have always wondered on the bad nights about the sailors on the decks of that old ship, that they were once like me on a night watch on an empty crossing, and they saw the other ship and they were not steered clear in time. Breathe slow. The rain has you. Here's the next. The first officer checked the radar 3 times. That is what I remember most clearly, more clearly even than the silhouette of the old vessel against the stars. He tapped the screen, adjusted the range, swore under his breath, and called for another set of eyes. The sea ahead was empty by instrument. No return.
No transponder.
Nothing on automatic identification. Nothing in the traffic reports. Nothing in the tidy electronic world that modern sailors trust to prove what exists around them. Yet outside, beyond the glass, an old ship moved across the dark water with lights like yellowed eyes. At a distance, it was almost beautiful. There is a romance to old ships that disappears when you see one where it cannot be. The high stern, the dark rigging, the lanterns swaying though there was no visible swell. All of it seemed lifted from a painting or a museum harbor. For a few foolish seconds, wonder softened fear. Then the radio remained silent after our third hail, and the captain's face changed, and the beauty became what beauty often becomes at sea after midnight. Allure. The captain knew more than he said. Captains often do. Responsibility teaches them to hold back words until words are useful. He ordered course alteration in a voice so level that only those of us close to him heard the fear under it. Give her room, he said. More room than that.
No spatlaut. No horn.
No further hail. We were to pass like a man crossing the street to avoid a funeral procession. Respectful and quick, pretending not to stare at the coffin. But I stared. Every young sailor stares at the thing he has been told not to stare at. Through binoculars, the other ship sharpened into impossible detail. Its sails were not filled by wind. They hung and bellied in a rhythm of their own. Its deck shone wet in the lantern light. The crew moved with the unhurried competence of men who had done the same tasks for longer than memory. One climbed a rattlin with the slow inevitability of a dream. Another coiled a rope that seemed to have no end. A third stood at the rail and looked not at us, but through us, as if measuring the distance between ships in a way that had nothing to do with yards or cables. I noticed then that our own crew had gathered in silence. Men who would normally joke at anything stood still, hands in pockets or gripping rails, faces turned toward the passing vessel. Some looked afraid, some looked mournful. One older man crossed himself and then hid his hand, embarrassed by the instinct. No one mocked him. The other ship invited old gestures. It made modern men remember childhood prayers, harbor superstitions, grandmother's warnings, all the things daylight had trained us to laugh at. As it drew a beam, a bell sounded from its deck. One clear strike, then another. Not ship's time as we knew it, not any watch pattern I recognized. The sound carried over the water with impossible purity, thin and cold, and after each strike I felt something inside me answer. Not a desire to board, not exactly. More like the recognition of work unfinished. The bell said there was a watch to stand, a line to haul, a place in the order of things for any sailor willing to cross the water between us. Called not to fear, but to duty. That is more dangerous to sailors than temptation. The old sailor who later spoke to me had kept his eyes down during the passing. I asked why, and he said because faces are how it chooses. If you look too long at the drowned crew, you may see one that looks back with your own loneliness. You may see someone you lost. You may see yourself as you might look after years aboard that ship, and some part of you may accept the image before the rest of you can refuse. Ships recruit in different ways, he said. Living ships offer wages. Dead ships offer belonging. I did see one face, I wish I could say I did not, but I did. A man near the forward rail, younger than the others, no older than I was then. His clothes were wrong for our time, but his expression was horribly current. He looked confused, newly afraid, not settled into the endless labor like the others. He turned as we passed, and his eyes fixed on our deck with such naked pleading that I almost raised a hand. The captain saw me start to move and struck my arm down hard enough to bruise. "Do not answer," he said, though the young man had not spoken. Later I understood. A wave is an answer. A nod is an answer. Pity can be an answer. The other ship survives on acknowledgement. To recognize one of its crew too fully may give it a line across the water. The captain had not been cruel. He had saved me from compassion at exactly the moment compassion could have been used as a hook. The young sailor's face followed me for years. I still wonder whether he had been taken recently from some other vessel that came too close, and whether he had also once been stopped from waving too late. When the ship moved past our stern, our engines faltered. Only for a moment, but enough that every man aboard felt it. The lights dimmed, the hum dropped. Our vessel, reliable and modern, became suddenly old in the presence of something older. In that dimming, I heard voices across the water, not loud, not calling to us exactly, but singing under their breath as they worked. A work song, perhaps, a shanty. The words were blurred by distance and time, but the rhythm entered the blood. Several of our crew began breathing with it before the engines caught again and broke the spell. The wake of the other ship was wrong. It should have rolled us at least a little. Instead, it left a narrow line of absolute stillness behind it, a black seam on the water where no ripple crossed. We passed over that seam despite the captain's attempt to avoid it, and for one instant the temperature dropped so sharply that frost formed on the inside of the bridge window. In that cold, I smelled old bilge, wet rope, coal smoke, and something like flowers left too long in a closed room. Then the seam passed under us, the sea resumed its motion, and the ghost ship sailed on without turning. No one slept after that. The rest of the night watch became a vigil. We kept scanning the horizon behind us, expecting the yellow lights to return, afraid they would and afraid they would not. At breakfast, the captain made no announcement. He did not need to. Every man aboard knew the official silence required of such things. At sea, survival often depends on agreeing not to burden language with what language cannot carry. The log recorded unidentified vessel sighted at distance. No contact, altered course to maintain safe separation. That was true in the way skeletons are true without flesh. The old sailor's explanation came 3 nights later, when he found me staring off the stern. He told me that some lost ships continue because the sea is not finished with them. A ship is a community, he said, a promise made of wood or steel and labor. If it goes down wrong, if it dies with orders unfinished or a course unmet, sometimes the promise does not break. It sails on, gathering men who answer its need, replacing those who fade into the salt, crewed by everyone who came too close to a duty that was no longer theirs. I asked him how to know one when you see it. He laughed without humor. You know, he said, it looks like a ship and like a grave at the same time. It makes you want to salute and run. It carries weather around it that the rest of the sea does not share. And if your captain tells you to turn away, you turn away before curiosity finds your feet. The ocean is full of vessels still making passages that ended before your grandparents were born. They are not evil, he said. That is the mistake young men make. They are simply still sailing and they need crew. For a long time after Every light on the horizon made me tense. Most were normal ships, of course. Tankers, fishing vessels, freighters, cruise liners blazing like cities. But normal ships answer when hailed. Normal ships leave returns on radar. Normal ships do not make experienced captains steer away with bloodless faces. And normal ships, when they pass in the night, do not leave you with the sickly sense that some part of you has been counted, considered, and perhaps placed on a list to be called again, should the other ship ever cross your course a second time. Breathe slow. The rain has you. Here is the next. The thing on the sonar. I worked on a commercial fishing boat out on the deep water, and our sonar was our most important tool. It pinged the depths beneath us and showed us what was down there, the schools of fish, the contours of the bottom, the shape of the underwater world we trawled. I spent hours watching that sonar screen, reading the deep, and I knew what everything on it meant. The fish, the bottom, the thermoclines, the ordinary readings of the working sea. Which is how I knew, the night the thing appeared on the sonar, that it was nothing ordinary at all. We were over deep water, very deep, the bottom far below us, fishing late. And on the sonar, rising from the deep bottom, a mass appeared. A return, a solid shape, vast, lifting slowly up through the water column from the deep floor toward our boat. A school of fish reeds as a scattered cloud. This was solid, one thing, and it was enormous, bigger than our boat as it rose, then far bigger, a single solid mass the size of which kept growing on the screen as it ascended from the deep toward us. I called the captain. He looked at the sonar, at the vast thing rising from the deep, and his face went hard, and he ordered the gear hauled in and the engines started now, fast. We ran. The captain pushed the boat hard across the water, and on the sonar I watched the thing respond. It stopped rising, held at depth, and then it followed. It tracked us. The vast solid mass moved through the deep water beneath us, matching our speed, staying below, following our boat as we fled across the dark sea. A thing the size of which I still cannot comprehend, pacing us from the deep, just below, for miles. The captain ran us all the way back toward shallower water, toward the coast, the engine screaming, and the thing followed the whole way, vast and patient on the sonar, beneath us until at last we reached water too shallow for it, and it broke off and sank back down, returning to the deep where it lived. The captain never discussed it, but he was shaken, and he was an old fisherman, and old fishermen don't shake easily. Later, he told me only this quietly over a drink ashore, that there are things in the deep ocean that we never see, that never come up, that live their whole vast lives in the dark cold depths far below where any light reaches, and that, very rarely, one of them notices a boat. Notices the noise, the disturbance, the little hull crossing the surface far above, and rises out of curiosity to see what's making the sound. Most of them are bigger than the boat, he said. Some are bigger than anything you'd believe. And the only thing you can do, when one rises to look at you, is run for the shallows and pray it loses interest. I fished for a few more years, but I never watched the deep water sonar the same way again, because I knew now what could be down there in the deep beneath the working boat. And I knew that sometimes it rises just to look, and that the ocean is far deeper and far more inhabited than those of us who only float on its surface will ever truly understand. Almost there. Stay soft. Here's the next one. Fishermen trust the sonar more than they trust their own eyes. Eyes are fooled by fog, glare, darkness, wishful thinking. The sonar is blunt. It sends its question down into the water and draws the answer in cold lines of light. Fish become clouds, bottom becomes contour, wrecks become hard shapes, and the empty depth becomes a black column waiting to be read. I had spent so much of my life reading that screen that I could glance at it half asleep and know whether the sea beneath us was worth working. That is why the first return made my stomach drop before my mind understood it. It came from below the useful world, below the schools, below the temperature layers, below the range where we usually cared to know anything. At first, it was only a stain at the bottom edge of the display, a heavy return rising out of the black. I adjusted the gain, thinking clutter, thinking false echo, thinking anything but what the machine insisted on showing me. The shape remained. Then it grew. Not because the screen was changing scale, because the thing was coming up. The captain had a superstition about saying size aloud. On fishing boats, men will shout measurements for a catch, a wave, a storm, anything. But when he saw the sonar that night, he would not name dimensions. He leaned close, watched the return thicken, and said only, "Haul the gear." His voice had no room for argument. We hauled. Nets, lines, everything. Men moved fast without understanding why, responding to fear in the captain's back before they saw the screen themselves. Good crews do that. They obey the fear of the man who has earned it. The return was too solid. That was the first wrongness. Living masses, even great ones, have texture on sonar. Schools scatter. Whales curve and pass. Bottom features hold steady. This thing rose as a single blunt fact, dense and unbroken, too broad for the beam to capture at once. The edges of it disappeared off the display, not because it was vague, but because it was larger than our question. The sonar was asking, "What is beneath us?" And the sea was answering with more than the screen had language to draw. When the engines came up, every man aboard felt exposed. It is a strange sensation to flee from something below, because the boat can only move across the surface while the thing beneath moves through the substance that holds you. There is no hiding on water. No hill, no wall, no door. Our hull might as well have been glass. The captain turned toward shallower grounds, and the deck tilted under the speed, and I stayed at the sonar because someone had to watch whether the darkness followed. It followed. I watched the return level off beneath us, adjust and move. That was the moment the entire crew's fear changed from confusion to certainty. A rising thing might be accidental. A following thing has noticed you. It held depth beneath our stern, not close enough to strike, perhaps, but close enough that the sonar painted its upper surface again and again in thick burning bands. The captain kept asking range. I kept answering. Neither of us used the word behind. We both knew that was where it was. The radio stayed silent. No distress call, no chatter, no sign that the world understood anything was happening on our little boat. Above, the night was ordinary. A few stars, low cloud, black water breaking white at the bow as we ran. Below, on the screen, something impossible pursued us with the calm of a creature that did not need to hurry because distance in the deep meant something different to it. I remember thinking that if it chose to rise fully, we would not even have time to scream. The boat would simply become an event inside its movement. The captain knew the bottom by memory. Old fishermen carry maps under their skin. He angled us toward a shelf where the water climbed toward land, still deep by any human measure, but too shallow, he hoped, for whatever had risen from the abyss. The return remained with us until the numbers changed. 300 fathoms, 200, 100. The thing stayed below, matching us. Then, at the edge of the shelf, it stopped. Not slowed. Stopped. The screen showed the vast mass holding at the boundary like an animal at a fence. I looked from the sonar to the black water astern and saw nothing. That too was awful. We expect monsters to break the surface, to show teeth, eyes, proof. But the deep kept its proof on the screen, where only sound could see it. Our wake stretched behind us under the moon, ordinary and empty, while the sonar showed a presence just beyond the shallows, waiting. I wondered if it understood the shelf as a limit, or if it simply chose not to cross. The difference matters only to those who still believe limits protect them. When the return finally sank, it did so slowly. It did not vanish like a false echo. It descended layer by layer, back into the deep, the way an enormous thought withdraws from the edge of speech. No one cheered. We were too busy imagining the distance it was traveling downward, the cold and pressure closing over it again, the darkness receiving it as something familiar. We had seen it for a few minutes on a machine. The sea had held it for longer than our species has had boats. Back in port, the captain told everyone the fishing had been poor and the weather uncertain, and no one contradicted him. Dock talk is a currency, but some stories are too expensive to spend. Still, rumors moved. They always do. Another crew had once seen a return like a hill moving under them. A research vessel had lost instruments over the same trench. A trawler's net had come back not torn but cleanly removed, as if something below had decided the offering was unacceptable. None of these stories were told loudly. They were spoken over mugs, under gull noise, with glances toward the harbor mouth. I kept fishing after that because people need money and fear does not pay rent. But the sonar became different to me. It was no longer merely a tool. It was a window in the floor. Every ping was an intrusion. Every screen refresh a chance that the deep might answer with something too large to be useful. On ordinary days, the fish returns comforted me. Small lives, workable lives, the kind of sea we could understand and sell by the pound. But whenever the bottom fell away beneath us, whenever the screen showed only depth and dark, I felt watched by the space below the range. Once, months later, I saw a faint shape at the very bottom of the display and killed the gain before anyone else noticed. It may have been clutter. It may have been a ridge. It may have been nothing at all. But I could not bear another answer. Some men call that cowardice. I call it respecting a closed door. The deep ocean is mostly closed to us, and perhaps that is mercy. We lower sound into it, drag hooks through it, scrape nets along its edges, and call the results knowledge. Then, once in a while, something rises far enough to remind us that knowledge is not ownership. I do not miss fishing over deep water. I miss the work, the companionship, the honest exhaustion of coming home with salt dried on your face. I miss gulls over the stern and coffee strong enough to hurt. But I do not miss that screen glowing in the dark wheelhouse, showing a giant truth lifting from below. When people ask whether I believe in sea monsters, I tell them no because monster is too small a word. Monsters belong to stories. What I saw on sonar belonged to the ocean. It was not breaking into our world. We had drifted briefly over the edge of it. Almost there. Stay soft. Here is the next one. The voice on the radio. On the night watch, on an empty ocean, the radio is your one thread of connection to the world. The channels mostly silent out in the deep stretches, just the hiss of static and the occasional distant traffic. I was on watch, far from any land, the radio murmuring its static, when a voice broke through, a distress call, a vessel in trouble, the voice frightened, urgent, calling for help, giving a position, describing an emergency, a ship going down, souls in peril, the oldest and most sacred call of the sea, a mayday, a plea for rescue. And the law of the sea, the deepest law, is absolute. You answer a distress call. You go to those in peril. You render aid. Always. I alerted the captain immediately, and we plotted the position the distressed vessel had given. And the captain frowned at the chart because the position was strange. It placed the distressed ship very close to us, just over the horizon, in a part of the empty ocean where we'd seen no lights, no vessel, nothing. But a distress call is a distress call. We changed course toward the position to render aid, and I stayed on the radio, talking to the frightened voice, reassuring them that help was coming, getting details. And the details were wrong, subtly, increasingly wrong. The voice described its vessel, its situation, its position, and none of it quite cohered, the facts shifting, the story not holding together, the kind of wrongness you feel before you can name it. We approached the position, and there was nothing there. Empty ocean, dark water, no distressed vessel, no lights, no wreckage, no souls in peril, nothing, in the spot from which the frantic mayday came. And still the voice called on the radio, growing more urgent, more frightened, begging us to come closer, to come to the exact position, to come right up to the spot where they were going down. But there was nothing there. The captain stopped the boat. He would take us no closer to the empty patch of sea from which a drowning voice begged us to approach. And on the radio, the voice's tone changed, the fear draining out of it, the urgency cooling into something flat and patient and cold, and it said, "Come closer. You're so close. Just come to the position. Come right over the spot. Come and help us." From an empty patch of dark ocean, over deep water, a voice calling ships to come right over one specific spot. The captain turned us away. He would not take the boat over that position, no matter how the voice called, and as we withdrew, the voice followed us on the radio, pleading, then demanding, then simply repeating, cold and patient, "Come back. Come to the position. Come over the spot." We left it behind, and the captain told me when we were well clear what he believed, that there are things in the deep that have learned the one call no sailor can ignore. The distress call, the mayday, the plea for rescue, because the law of the sea compels us to answer it, to come, to approach, and something in the deep over certain spots of dark water sends out the call in a frightened human voice and waits for a ship to do the decent thing, the lawful thing, the thing every sailor is bound to do, and come right over the spot into the deep water where it waits. "Answer the radio," the captain said, "but verify before you approach, because some maydays don't come from ships. Some come from the water itself, and the spot they want you to come to is the spot they're waiting under. I have never forgotten it. The one call you cannot ignore, used as bait, over the deep dark water, by something patient enough to learn exactly what a drowning sailor sounds like. Two more. Let your breathing slow with the rain. Here's the next. The sacredness of a distress call is difficult to explain to people who have only known roads. On land, help has addresses, ambulances, police, signs, phones, neighbors. At sea, help is whoever hears you. The voice in trouble may belong to a stranger, even an enemy, but the moment mayday crosses the radio, the stranger becomes your obligation. Every sailor knows that. We are all small on the water, and any of us may be the voice one day. That is why the call we heard that night worked so well. It used the best law we have against us. First, the voice sounded exactly right. Panic, but controlled. Fear, but trained enough to give coordinates. A man trying not to die while remembering procedure. He repeated the vessel name, though static chewed the syllables. He gave a number aboard. He said they were taking on water. He said the pumps had failed. He said they could see no lights. He said, "Please hurry, please, we are going down." There are tones that bypass suspicion and go directly to the hands. By the time doubt entered the room, our course had already changed. The captain did everything correctly. He logged the call. He attempted confirmation. He alerted the crew. He plotted the position. He asked for repeated coordinates. He had us scan the horizon and check the radar. Procedure is a net sailor's cast over chaos. But the sea that night slipped through every knot. The coordinates remained just ahead, close enough to demand action, empty enough to trouble the most obedient conscience. Each time the captain asked for the vessel's identifying details, the voice answered quickly, but not consistently. Names shifted. Numbers changed. The emergency stayed urgent while the facts around it would not hold still. I remember the smell of the bridge. Coffee burned in the pot. Wet foul-weather gear drying badly. The warm dust scent of electronics. Ordinary smells, human smells, while through the speakers came a voice that seemed to carry cold water into the room. Static broke around it like surf. Sometimes I heard other sounds under the words. Not screams exactly. Not yet. More like many people breathing through water. Many mouths trying to speak from the same depth. Letting one voice lead because one frightened voice is more effective than a chorus. We called other vessels. No answer. We contacted the coast station. Too far for clean reception, but enough to leave a report. No one had the distressed vessel on record near us. No emergency beacon.
No satellite alert.
Nothing. Still, the voice called. That is the cruelty of it. A false distress call does not become harmless because it cannot be verified. The possibility of truth remains like a hook. What if someone is there? What if equipment has failed? What if your suspicion is the reason people die? Decency can be turned into a trap because decent people would rather risk themselves than abandon the desperate. As we approached the position, the sea changed. Not dramatically. No great swell, no lightning, no cinematic warning. The water simply grew darker, though the night around us did not. The bow wave lost its white edge. The compass light flickered. The air felt heavy and metallic. One deckhand later said he tasted blood, though there was none. The coordinates lay ahead, an invisible point in the ocean, and every instrument insisted there was nothing there. Yet the radio voice became more excited, almost relieved, urging us closer with the hunger of someone seeing a door begin to open. The captain stopped us short. I have admired many decisions in my life, but none more than that one. He stood with the chart under one hand and the radio in the other and chose disobedience to the emotional command of the Mayday. He did not abandon rescue lightly. I saw what it cost him. But some instinct older than regulation told him that taking the vessel directly over that position would be the last correct procedure we ever performed. So he held us outside the spot and demanded visual confirmation. The voice did not like that. The change was immediate. Panic drained away like water through a crack. The breathing steadied. The gratitude vanished. What remained was a calm voice still using the shape of distress but no longer wearing the feeling. "Come closer," it said. "Right over us. You are almost here. We can see your lights. We are beneath you." That last phrase made the bridge go still. Not near you. Not ahead. Beneath you. The voice corrected itself quickly, but we had all heard it. We were not speaking to a ship on the surface. We were speaking to something that considered beneath a kind of location. When the captain ordered us away, the radio filled with sound. The same voice multiplied. Men, women, children, old voices, young voices, all calling Mayday over one another, giving different vessel names, different disasters, different pleas. Fire, collision, taking water,
Man overboard.
engine failure, please help, please come, please turn back. Every emergency a sailor is trained to answer unfolded from the speaker at once. A net made of human need thrown across our backs. Several crew members cried openly. One tried to turn toward the helm, not mutinous, simply overcome by the instinct to help. Two others held him. Then all the voices stopped except one. A child's voice, small, wet, terrified. It said it could see our lights going away. It asked why we were leaving. It asked whether we were bad people. I think that was the cruelest thing the thing in the water did. Could not force us, so it tried shame. The captain reached over and turned the volume down until the child's voice became a whisper, then a thread, then nothing. His hand shook while he did it. Nobody blamed him. Nobody could have done better. We kept course away from the position for hours, though the rational danger had passed in minutes. No one wanted to sleep. The radio stayed off. That, too, violated every habit of seamanship. But the captain judged silence safer than hearing. Near dawn, he switched it on briefly. Only ordinary static answered. The position behind us lay empty on the chart, a set of numbers like any other. But every man aboard knew there are places on the sea that are less locations than mouths, and that we had nearly steered into one because it had learned to cry. Later, in port, the captain filed a report stripped of everything impossible. Unverified distress transmission. No vessel located. Suspicious signal. Mariners advised caution. That was all official language could hold. But among sailors, the fuller warning spread in the older way. Verify before approach. Do not cross directly over a mayday with no vessel, no beacon, no light. If the facts shift, hold your distance. If the voice asks you to come over the exact spot, be careful. And if the caller says they are beneath you, turn away, no matter how human they sound when they beg. I still believe in answering distress calls. I have to. Without that belief, the sea becomes a wilderness without mercy, and sailors become animals passing in the dark. But belief is not blindness. The old law remains sacred because real people still need help. That is what makes the imitation so terrible. Something in the deep studied our noblest reflex and built a lure from it. It learned that the fastest way to bring a ship to a waiting place is not to threaten, but to plead. Not to roar from the water, but to whisper through the radio in the voice of someone drowning. Sometimes, on land, I hear emergency sirens in the distance and feel that same cold conflict. The need to help. The fear of being called by something that knows help is holy. I remind myself that most cries are real. Most lights mean safety. Most voices are only voices. But out on the ocean, where the dark is deep enough to hide anything and the law of rescue is older than nations, there are voices that come from no ship. They wait over black water, patient and practiced, calling for the good in us, because the good in us is the part most likely to walk or sail willingly into the dark. Two more. Let your breathing slow with the rain. Here is the next. The drowned crew. I served on an old ship, a vessel that had sailed for many decades, that had seen a great deal, that had, over its long life, lost crew to the sea the way old ships do. Storms, accidents, the ordinary tragedies of a life at sea, each one taking a sailor down into the deep over the ship's long years. I didn't think much about it when I signed on. Every old ship has lost sailors. It's the nature of the sea. But I came to learn that on that particular ship, the sailors it had lost had not entirely left, that the drowned crew still sailed with us, in the dark. It started with glimpses on the night watch, figures on the deck, at the edge of vision that vanished when I looked. Sailors going about the work of the ship, in old uniforms, faded and wrong, present in the dark and gone when regarded. I told myself it was exhaustion, the tricks the night watch plays. But the other crew had seen them too. I learned in the careful way these things get discussed among sailors. The drowned crew, the lost sailors of the ship's long history, still aboard, still working, still sailing with us through the dark. They were not malevolent. They did the work they'd always done. I'd find lines coiled that I hadn't coiled, watches kept that I hadn't kept, the small labors of the ship done by unseen hands in the night. The drowned crew still served the ship they died on. And they watched over us, too, the living crew. That was the thing I came to understand and to be grateful for. The drowned crew knew the sea, knew the ship, knew the dangers, better than any of us living sailors. And again, we were kept safe in ways we couldn't explain, warned of weather before it came, a hand on the wheel in a crisis that wasn't a living hand, dangers averted by unseen intervention. The drowned crew looked after the living crew, the experienced dead watching over the inexperienced living, keeping us safe on the ship they all served, the dead and the living together, sailing the dark water as one crew across the boundary of death. I sailed on that ship for years with the drowned crew always aboard, always working, always watching over us, and I came to feel a deep kinship with them. My fellow sailors who had given their lives to the sea and the ship, and who served still faithfully forever. And I'll tell you the thing that comforts me now, an old sailor myself, my own end not far off. When I die and sailors think about dying at sea, I would not mind, I have decided, joining them, the drowned crew, sailing the ship forever, doing the work I love, watching over the living sailors who come after, never leaving the sea that has been my whole life. There are worse eternities than that, to sail on with your fellow sailors, the dead and the living together, keeping the ship and watching over your shipmates, forever, on the dark and endless and beautiful sea. I hope, when my time comes, that I join the drowned crew. I hope they'd have me. Sleep well. Some of the ones who watch over us in the dark are just old sailors, doing the work they loved, keeping the watch they always kept, glad of the company, forever. Last one now. Let this be the one you fall asleep to. Old ships are never empty of memory. Even before I knew about the drowned crew, I felt the vessel had a crowded soul. Every passage left something behind. A scratch in brass, a patched rail, a stain on a chart table, a habit in the way doors swung during weather. Ships collect the gestures of everyone who has worked them. A man coils rope a certain way for 20 years, and after he is gone the rope almost seems to prefer that shape. A cook curses at a stove every morning, and the galley keeps the rhythm of his anger. A ship remembers through use. The first figure I saw was near the bow just before dawn, when the world was more gray than black. I thought he was one of ours until I realized I did not know his coat, or the set of his cap, or the way he stood with one hand resting on a line that had not been rigged that way in decades. He looked toward the horizon as if waiting for weather only he could see. When I called out, he turned slightly, not enough for me to see his face, and dissolved into mist and deck shadow. The line under his hand remained moving, though there was no wind. Sailors are practical about ghosts when the ghosts are practical. That may sound strange, but it is true. A figure that screams in a corridor is frightening. A figure that secures a hatch before a squall is useful. The drowned crew were useful. They were not theatrical. They did not drag chains or moan under moonlight. They appeared as labor, a knot found corrected, a door dogged tight before a wave struck, a warning bell ringing though no living hand was near it. They made themselves known through seamanship, which is the only language some old sailors ever fully trusted. The living crew had rules for them, though no one wrote them down. Do not mock them. Do not thank them too loudly. Do not follow one below decks if it walks somewhere the ship no longer has a passage. Do not take a tool from a hand you can see through. If you hear work being done on deck at night, look once, respectfully, then let them finish. Never ask which accident took them. That was considered rude and perhaps dangerous. A sailor's death belongs to him until he offers it. Over time, I learned some of their patterns. One appeared before heavy weather, always near the barometer, though he never touched it. Another stood by the port rail whenever fog thickened, listening for traffic with a patience greater than instruments. A third worked in the engine spaces, where the living engineers swore they sometimes saw wet footprints on hot metal plates. Each had a place, a duty, a watch that death had not ended. They were not wandering. They were assigned. The ship treated them as crew. I know how that sounds, but anyone who has loved a vessel will understand. She creaked differently when they were near, not in distress, but recognition. Doors eased for them. Lights steadied. The compass, temperamental at the best of times, settled when the drowned helmsman was said to be on watch. I came to believe that the ship had not lost those sailors in the way we speak of loss. The sea had taken their bodies, perhaps, but the ship had kept their service, and maybe their affection, and maybe enough of their souls to matter. One storm made believers of all of us who still doubted. It came faster than forecast. A hard black wall of weather that folded the horizon and drove rain sideways across the deck. We were undermanned for what needed doing. Lines snapped, cargo shifted, alarms multiplied. In the worst of it, I saw men on deck who were not on the roster, shapes moving through rain with impossible steadiness, hauling, securing, bracing with the living crew. One took my arm when I slipped and set me upright with a grip cold enough to burn. By the time I turned to thank him, he was gone, and the line he had helped secure held through the night. After the storm, we found a name scratched into the salt on the inside of a hatch cover, not freshly carved, written in drying crystals, as if a wet finger had traced it and evaporated away. The name belonged to a sailor lost from the ship 30 years before, according to an old crew list the bosun kept folded in a locker. He had gone overboard in weather not unlike the storm we survived. That night, the bosun left a mug of coffee on the deck near the rail. In the morning it was empty, though no living man admitted drinking it. I began reading the old incident reports. Men lost in storms, men crushed by cargo, men taken by lines, men who simply vanished from the night watch and were never recovered. Official reports reduced death to time, place, probable cause. They do not say whether a man loved the ship, whether he had promised a child he would come home, whether he sang while greasing equipment, whether his bunk smelled of tobacco or peppermint soap. The drowned crew gave those reports flesh. They were not entries. They were colleagues. They had jokes once, debts, favorite mugs, bad knees, superstitions. The sea had ended their lives, but not their membership. There was comfort in that, but also warning. Ships ask loyalty. The sea asks more. To imagine joining the drowned crew can seem romantic only to the living. I knew that. Yet on long watches, when the deck was silver and the engine steady and the unseen dead worked around me with quiet competence, I understood the appeal.
No bills. No store disappointments.
No aging out of work you loved. Just the ship, the watch, the endless water, and companions who understood without explanation. Some eternities are punishments. Some are duties so familiar that they become home. The captain never spoke of them directly, but he gave orders that accounted for them. Leave that locker open during storms. Do not store cargo against the old passageway. Keep the bell polished. Maintain the memorial plaque even if no inspector cares. These instructions sounded like traditions until you sailed long enough to see why they mattered. A neglected ship grows hostile. A remembered crew grows protective. That was the captain's private theology, I think. Honor the dead, and the dead may help keep the living above water. When I finally left that ship, I did something I had once laughed at others for doing. I went to the bow at night, placed both hands on the rail, and said goodbye aloud. Not loudly, just enough for the deck to hear. I thanked the living crew, and then I thanked the drowned ones. The air grew cold around me, though the night was warm. Somewhere forward, a line tightened with a soft, approving creak. That was all. It was enough. Sailors do not require speeches. In dreams, I returned to her often, not to the ports or the storms, but to the night deck, where living and dead move together under low stars. I see the old helmsman at his place, the lookout in his outdated coat, the engineer leaving wet prints below. They do not beckon. That is important. They never ask me to come early. They simply nod as if to say the watch is covered for now, and when my time comes, if the sea and ship agree, perhaps there will be work for me. I wake from those dreams less afraid of death than I probably should be. Still, I hope my end comes gently, and not through cold water closing overhead. I hope no one has to write my name in an incident report. But if the sea does take me, I know what I would wish. Not to drift lost, not to call from the black water, not to become a voice that lures the lonely down. I would wish to find my ship, or some ship that needs an old hand, and stand the watch properly, to coil the lines, to warn the young, to keep the bell bright, to be counted not as gone, but as still aboard. Last one now. Let this be the one you fall asleep to, the lighthouse that calls ships in. I'll end with the darkest one, and the one I understand least, told to me by an old lighthouse keeper near the end of his life, about a light he'd once tended on a treacherous stretch of rocky coast. A lighthouse, you understand, exists to keep ships safe, to warn them away from the rocks, to guide them to safe water, to be a beacon of safety in the dark. That is its sacred purpose. But the lighthouse he told me about did the opposite. On certain nights, the old keeper said, that lighthouse called ships in, onto the rocks, to their doom, and he had learned why. He'd tended the light faithfully for years, keeping the beam burning, guiding ships safely past the treacherous rocks. But he'd begun to notice that on certain nights, dark nights, storm nights, ships would founder on the rocks despite the light, would steer toward the rocks as though guided onto them, as though the light were calling them into their destruction rather than warning them away. And he'd begun to feel on those nights that the light was not entirely his, that something else used it, that on the dark nights, the beam that should have warned ships away instead lured them in, and the keeper, watching helplessly, would see ships steer onto the rocks and break apart and go down, drawn by his own light. His sacred beacon turned to a deadly lure. He investigated over his years there in the way a keeper can, and he came to understand the terrible history of the place. Long ago, before the lighthouse, that stretch of coast had been the haunt of wreckers, Men who lured ships onto the rocks with false lights to plunder the wreckage, drowning whole crews for profit. Generations of wreckers who had murdered countless sailors on those rocks with their false beacons. And when the lighthouse was finally built to end the wrecking, to keep ships safe at last, the wreckers' work did not entirely end. Their hunger, their cruelty, their lust for wrecks had soaked into that coast, into those rocks, and now used the lighthouse itself, the very beacon built to stop them, to continue their work. On the dark nights, the drowned greed of the old wreckers turned the safe light into a lure and called ships in and wrecked them and drowned their crews the way the wreckers always had. The old keeper could not stop it. He tried. He dimmed the light on the dangerous nights or change its pattern, anything to break the lure. But the light would burn on regardless, calling ships in, and he could only watch, helpless, as the old wreckers used his beacon to claim more ships, more sailors, more drowned souls to join their endless hungry work. He left that posting, eventually, broken by it, by the ships he couldn't save, by the light he tended that murdered the sailors it should have saved. And he told me his story near the end of his life, the old keeper, so that someone would know, so that the truth of that light would not die with him. I don't know if that lighthouse still stands, still calls ships in on the dark nights, still serves the drowned greed of the old wreckers. But I think of it whenever I see a lighthouse now, sweeping its beam across the dark water, and I understand that even a beacon of safety, even a light built to save, can be turned, by old enough cruelty, into a lure that calls the trusting in to their doom. Most lighthouses keep ships safe, but pray you never sail past the one that calls them in. Sleep well, and trust the lights that guide you, but know that not every light in the dark is a friend, and some of the brightest beacons are the most patient lures of all. The old keeper told the story with his hands wrapped around a cup he never drank from. His fingers were bent with age and weather, the nails thick, the skin pale where rings had once been. He had the look of men who have spent too much of life listening to storms through stone walls. Even before he began, I knew the story had lived in him for decades. Some memories sit near the surface. Others become part of the bones and ache when weather changes. This was the second kind. He said a lighthouse is a promise made visible. That was the first thing he wanted understood. A keeper does not simply maintain machinery. He keeps faith with strangers he will never meet. Every turn of the lens tells a ship, not here, not the rocks, stay wide, live through the night. It is humble work and sacred work. That was why the betrayal broke him. A storm can wreck a ship and remain a storm. A light that wrecks a ship has become a liar. At first, the accidents could be explained. Bad weather,
misread charts,
drunken captains, mechanical failure. The coast was treacherous, the rocks sharp, the currents difficult. But the keeper had stood in the lantern room and watched vessels alter course toward disaster with the steadiness of obedience. They did not drift onto the rocks. They came. Small fishing boats, coasters, once a passenger vessel lit warm against the storm, all turning toward the very danger his beam was meant to reveal. He would shout though no one could hear him. He would adjust, signal, pray. Still they came in. The first time he suspected the light itself, he nearly went mad with denial. He checked the rotation, the pattern, the timing, the glass. He compared logs, consulted charts, wrote letters that received polite, useless replies. Everything mechanical was correct. Yet on certain nights, watching from the tower, he felt the beam change in tension. That was how he phrased it.
intention.
The light looked the same to the eye, but not to the soul. It no longer warned. It beckoned. It reached into weather and found ships and drew them like a hand curling a finger. The history of the wreckers came to him through parish records, old trial notes, scraps of local rumor, and one diary hidden in a family Bible. Men had made fortunes from false lights on that coast. They would hang lanterns where no lantern should be, guide ships onto the teeth of the rocks, then wait for the breaking. The sea would kill, the wreckers would harvest, and the drowned would be called unfortunate. That kind of cruelty, repeated long enough, becomes more than crime. It becomes a habit in a place. The rocks learned the taste of ships. The shore learned to expect offerings. When the lighthouse was built, the living wreckers lost their trade. But hunger does not always die with those who fed it. The keeper believed their greed remained in the coast, soaked into the stone, the spray, the very idea of light on that headland. The beacon meant to end the false lights was built on ground that remembered using light as a weapon. And memory in haunted places is not passive. It repeats. It adapts. The old wreckers no longer had hands to lift lanterns, so they reached through the official light instead, corrupting the promise into an invitation. He tried to resist quietly at first. On suspect nights, he cleaned the lens twice. He checked the mechanism every hour. He watched the beam like a jailer watches a prisoner. Sometimes he thought he saw shadows moving inside the glass, figures passing where only flame and lens should have been. Not reflections. Men, perhaps, bent-backed shapes with hats pulled low, their hands cupped around invisible lanterns, their faces turned always toward the sea. When he entered the lantern room, the shadows vanished, and the light resumed its innocent sweep. During one storm, a small vessel answered the corrupted beam. The keeper saw it through rain, a brave little light fighting the black water, then turning where it should not turn. He ran up the stairs and tried to mask the lamp. The shutters jammed. He burned his hands on metal. He screamed into the wind. Below, the ship came on. He said he could feel, in that moment, not just helplessness but opposition. The tower resisted him. The very structure seemed to brace against his efforts. Stone and iron loyal not to him but to the old hunger beneath it. The vessel struck before dawn. At first light, wreckage moved among the rocks. The keeper found a child's shoe in a tide pool. He never forgave himself for that, though no fair judge could have blamed him. Haunted men are rarely fair judges of themselves. He kept the shoe in a drawer for years, wrapped in cloth, not as morbid trophy but as witness. Whenever someone suggested the accidents were only weather, he would open the drawer after they left and look at that shoe until he remembered why he could not accept ordinary explanations. He reported what he could. Dangerous optical anomaly during storms. Possible refraction issue. Pattern confusion in heavy weather. Authorities sent inspectors, and the inspectors found nothing. They came on clear days, of course, with clipboards and clean boots, and the lighthouse behaved. Evil old enough to where a lighthouse knows when to look like maintenance. The official conclusion was human stress, difficult posting, grief after multiple wrecks. The keeper was advised to rest. The rocks, he told me, were not advised to stop hungering. Eventually, he began leaving the lantern room on the worst nights. That was his confession. He could no longer bear to watch. He would sit in the lower chamber with his hands over his ears while the beam swept above him, and if a ship came in, he would hear the impact through the stone. The tower carried wrecks into the bones. Wood breaking, metal screaming, men shouting briefly, then the sea taking over. After each wreck, the light seemed cleaner, brighter, almost satisfied. That was when he understood that the beacon was not merely calling ships in. It was feeding something that had been fed that way for generations. The keeper left after a night he would not describe fully. He said only that the light called a ship he knew, a vessel whose captain had once shared tea with him ashore. He watched the man steer toward the rocks with the calm expression of someone seeing safe harbor. The keeper signaled frantically. The captain raised a hand in greeting, grateful, trusting, and followed the light to ruin. After that, the keeper packed one bag, walked down at dawn, and did not look back at the tower. A relief keeper found the lamp in perfect order. I asked why the lighthouse was not destroyed. The old man laughed then, a small dry sound. Destroy a lighthouse? On a coast that dangerous? The living need the light. Most nights it works. Most ships are saved. That is the worst part, he said. If a thing is wholly evil, men can oppose it. If it saves 99 ships and damns the 100th, men will call the 100th tragedy, cost, mystery, weather. The light's goodness protects its corruption. The beacon remains necessary, and so the hunger keeps its instrument. Before he died, the old keeper sent me a packet of papers. Copies of logs, maps, names of wrecks, dates of storms, fragments of testimony. No explanation beyond a note in his shaking hand. Remember that a light can lie. I keep those papers still. I have compared them with public records. Enough matches that I wish less did. Enough remains unexplained that I no longer look at coastal lights with simple comfort. Most are faithful. I believe that. I have to. But faithfulness, like darkness, may have exceptions. Sometimes I imagine the tower now, still standing against black weather, its beam sweeping the rocks. On ordinary nights, it warns ships away, and sailors bless it without knowing how close safety and danger can live inside the same light. On other nights, when the old hunger wakes in the stone and the drowned wreckers gather in the lens, the beam changes without changing. It becomes warm, welcoming, persuasive. A captain sees it and thinks harbor, thinks rescue, thinks home. He turns the wheel. The rocks wait. The light shines brighter. And somewhere in the tower, perhaps, a keeper who knows the truth stands helpless, tending a promise that something old has learned to pronounce as a lie. There is a reason old sailors speak softly when the night has been strange. Loud speech belongs to certainty, and the sea does not leave certainty intact. It leaves impressions instead. A voice that knew too many names, a handprint of salt where no hand could reach, a light that climbed the stairs, a signal that came from no ship, a sonar returned too large for the screen to hold. Men and women bring those impressions ashore and carry them for the rest of their lives, tucked behind ordinary days. They buy groceries, answer letters, grow older, tell simpler stories when asked why they left the water. But somewhere in them, the night watch is still happening. If there is comfort in these tapes, it is not the comfort of denial. The sea is deep. The dark is old. There are lights you should not follow and voices you should not answer. But there is also duty and fellowship and the stubborn human habit of keeping watch for one another. There are keepers who tend the beam, captains who turn away from bait, drowned sailors who still secure lines for the living, and tired men who grip the rail until dawn rather than climb over. The dark water may be vast, but the small lights matter. A lamp in a tower matters. A hand on a wheel matters. A refusal matters. So rest now on solid ground. Let the rain be only rain. Let every ship in these stories move farther out, its mast lights shrinking, its wake smoothing, its voices fading into distance. The ocean can keep its secrets tonight. You do not have to solve them. You do not have to lean over the rail. You do not have to answer the radio. You are home, and the door is locked, and whatever waits beneath the waves can wait without you. That's all the tapes for tonight. You made it to the end, or maybe you drifted off somewhere along the way, safe on solid ground far from the deep dark water. That's all right. That's what this is for. The rain will keep falling as long as you need it. The stories are done now. There's nothing left but the storm and the dark. And the dark is just the dark. You're not at sea tonight. You're home on dry land, the deep water far away, and the only water near you, the gentle rain on the roof. You're safe here. The door is locked. Let your shoulders go heavy and your breathing slow. If you want more, the next tape is already waiting. But for now, rest, sleep well, and I'll see you again next time after midnight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, No lantern is turning. No dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, No dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you. Steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. No radio is calling here, no lantern is turning, no dark shape is rising under your bed. Only rain, only quiet, only the soft ordinary night around you. The sea can wait outside the story. You are safe on land. Sleep safe tonight. The rain keeps its gentle rhythm against the roof, small and harmless, nothing like waves against a hull. Every story is drifting farther away now, out beyond the last light, where it can no longer reach the room. The deck is empty, the rail is cold only in memory, and the black water belongs to the distance. Breathe slowly and let the shoreline stay beneath you, steady as stone, familiar as home. The rain will carry the last of the salt away now, drop by drop, until only sleep remains. No masked light burns in your room. No radio waits beside your pillow. No wet hand touches the stair. The sea is distant, folded behind the story, and you are here, warm, breathing, safe, with morning already waiting somewhere beyond the dark, and the floor steady beneath you as you drift down.